Well, greetings and welcome back to another installment of our Admissions Partner webinar series. Today I am joined by Lieutenant Dave Radin here, who's the Operations Officer on board the Coast Cutter Eagle. More importantly, a graduate of the great class of 2009, a classmate of mine. And Dave's agreed to show up today, provide us some insights into the Eagle schedule and the training regime on board for our cadets. And with that, we're going to get the ball rolling for our presentation. So we're here to talk about America's Tall Ship today. There are some great videos online if you are not aware of already, so please take advantage of those online resources. First, USCGA.edu has some great Eagle experiences and Eagle information. And then in addition to that, you can find lots of online videos, including a great spot video of Eagle. And lots of other training videos. I know you're always posting content. And they've got a Facebook page. I'll remind you of that at the end, to go on to the Facebook page, like the Facebook page. They're in a competition close behind the Commandant of the Coast Guard and some of our larger sectors as far as the most commented and liked page out in the Coast Guard. So please keep building on that momentum. And the person responsible for that is Eagle's Operations Officer. So he's a little shy, so I made sure to include a picture of him with his face covered here, doing some damage control plots. They actually just got done with their inspection for TISTA, was it, today? That stands for?
Tailored Ships Training Availability.
There you go.
It's a standard Coast Guard training system for 2 weeks where we go through a series of drills and underway preparations to make sure the cutter is safe to sail and conduct its operations.
Perfect.
So we just finished that today.
Congratulations. A little bit about Lieutenant Radin here, class of 2009. Your major was?
Electrical engineering.
Electrical engineering. Always looking for more electrical engineers. And then went off to do his master's degree at the University of Rhode Island. Also has served at Base Honolulu in the C4 IT department. Really rough life there in the Coast Guard out in Hawaii. And then also on the cutters Hamilton and the Stratton. Favorite tour so far?
Eagle.
Eagle. You got to say Eagle, right? So Coast Cutter Eagle Operations Officer. What does the Operations Officer do on board Eagle?
Well, Alex, the Operations Officer on Eagle is similar to the Operations Officer on any Coast Guard cutter, but effectively our role is as the primary navigator on board the vessel to get us safely from point A to point B, and then to kind of coordinate and figure out what we're going to do once we get to point A and point B. So specifically on Eagle, we're a training vessel and a public affairs platform. So we coordinate engagement with the American public and international audiences, and then in between our port calls, we're training the trainees, the cadets, and the officer candidates.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here today. I appreciate it. And we'll get into some more information on Eagle, learn more about your schedule, and some of the operations that you perform. So, Eagle itself. Tell us a little bit about the ship, any background on it, and information that our volunteers might want to know.
Yeah, so the Cutter Eagle, if you're not familiar with it, it's the three-masted sailing ship that you see on a lot of Coast Guard
pamphlets, memorabilia,
advertising information.
Yeah.
The ship was originally constructed in Germany in 1936 and was a naval training vessel for the German Navy, specifically for U-boat officers. It sailed actively in the German fleet throughout World War II. But after the war, unfortunately, the Germans lost it, along with its 3 other sister ships were claimed by different Allied nations. The Eagle was targeted by the Coast Guard because during the war years, the Danish training ship Denmark was actually over here in the United States because Denmark was occupied and they couldn't go home. And the Coast Guard Academy staff at the time saw the value of sail training for their future officers. And so after the war, when they saw that a tall ship was available, they said, let's grab that. And so the U.S. Coast Guard took the ship in 1946, and we've been sailing it ever since.
Awesome. And the other ships include the Denmark, the Itasca, correct?
Those are our prior training ships,
okay.
Yes. But the sister ships to Eagle are the Gorch Fock the Tavarish, the Murcha, and the Sagres II.
Excellent. You passed your indoctrination for Eagle. Wonderful. So a little history there on Eagle as a war reparation following World War II. Some specifics on the ship itself and what it's able to do, if you want to go into some of that.
Yeah, so we're one of two actively commissioned sailing vessels in the U.S. Armed Forces, the other one being the famous USS Constitution, currently in Boston, Massachusetts. Our claim to fame is that we're the only active sailing vessel and that we actually sail around the world and go on adventures. We're 295 feet long, 147 and a half feet tall, with a 39-foot beam and a 16-foot draft. So we are long and skinny and sleek. We're built to be a sailing vessel, not a motor vessel.
Excellent.
And as you can see, our on the slide, our max speed is 17 plus knots under sail. So we're faster under sail than under engine, and we prefer to be under sail. We have 8 permanent officers and 50 permanent enlisted crew for a total complement of 58 people, and then plus trainees, which we'll go into a little bit later.
Yeah, if you can remind me how many racks on Eagle or how many beds on Eagle can you host?
We have 239 beds on board Eagle, and it actually makes us the most populous ship in the Coast Guard when we're fully staffed.
Wow, that's incredible. All right, so training opportunities for cadets, and I'm sure lots of cadets out there, future cadets, students, applicants, families are all kind of viewing this video as a way to gain insight into some of those training opportunities during the summer. Now, outside of Eagle, students get the chance to go to things like cadet aviation training programs, they do weapons qualifications, they do summer school, they do internship opportunities, and then active duty Coast Guard missions as well on board other cutters, small boat stations. But when it pertains to Eagle and the cadet summer training experiences, starting with SWAB summer, what do those weeks look like and what are cadets learning while on board?
Yeah, so SWAB summer, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the term, but that's the term we use for the initial indoctrination, basic training at the beginning of the academy experience. They finished that 6-week program with a week on board the Eagle. And so wherever we happen to be at that time, we move the incoming freshman trainees to wherever we are, bring them on board and give them, for many cadets, it's their first underway at sea experience.
What was your week on board Eagle for SWAB summer?
It was pretty incredible. Back in 2009, Eagle was finishing up a European tour while we were finishing our basic training. So we actually, my week, we flew out to Madeira, Portugal, and boarded the Eagle there in Portugal and sailed it down to the Canary Islands. Mm-hmm. And that was a pretty incredible week for a 18-year-old new recruit.
I agree. I was also on that flight, so they put us on a C-130, flew us across the Atlantic Ocean. I think at one point on the way back, we even stopped in the Azores on the way back. So what a way to start your college undergraduate experience and your Coast Guard career with a flight across the Atlantic Ocean on a C-130 Coast Guard aircraft to then be met by the Eagle and sail for a week. That's awesome. So into third class summer?
Third class summer, so that's our transitioning freshmen into sophomores. This is where they get the bulk of their underway experience, and it's a core training program, part of their 4-year academy experience, I guess. This summer, they're going to spend 6 weeks underway on the Eagle, again, wherever we happen to be going. It's the long cruise, and we can kind of stretch our legs a little bit. So this is where they may get a transatlantic crossing or sail down into the Caribbean or something a little more exotic for a longer leg. This is their training as a junior enlisted member, where they stand the fundamental watches and learn about life at sea, navigation, seamanship, damage control. It's a good experience.
They do get down the engine room. They go to the bottom of the ship or the top of the ship. So right. If they do students need to climb? That's a good question.
All students do an up and over, which is up to the first platform on the main mast, and then they come back down. After that, we don't require anyone to climb. However, we work with people of all confidence levels to get.
Excellent. And going into second class summer.
Second class summer, it's a limited opportunity. About 30 of the sophomores going into juniors. This is their cadre summer where they're training the incoming recruits. These folks are leading at sea, so they get a division of 8 of the new incoming freshmen, and they teach them. They're supervising those who are getting their first experience at sea. Then going into your first class summer, this is your junior officer afloat summer, where you would go out to different Coast Guard ships and kind of fill the more administrative leadership roles of a junior officer. We have the same experience on Eagle, so they're leading the third class cadets in their training program. Excellent.
You also take OCS and DCO. These are the officer candidate and direct commissioning officer recruits on board, and kind of give them an experience of life at sea as well, correct?
Yep.
So let's say average time on Eagle for cadets. I know that there's like, here's the most amount of time you can spend on Eagle as a cadet. What's like the average time? So I think that's a 1 week of swab summer and then third class year?
Yeah, and then 6 weeks. So every cadet will spend at least 6 weeks on Eagle. So a month and a half at sea on America's Tall Ship.
There you go. And then students and cadets who have spent the most time on Eagle. That's probably all the experiences combined. So that can be as many as, oh boy, you're talking 18, 24, probably 25 weeks on board the ship. It's half a year. You'd almost be part of the permanent crew at that point, fully qualified. Seasickness, is that a problem for cadets when they come on board?
Seasickness, sure. Motion sickness affects a lot of people. However, I will throw out there that the longer you spend at sea, generally the better you tolerate it. So people may be seasick for a first couple days or so, but we get over that pretty quick. And
Perfect. All right. So those are some of the training opportunities. I got some good images here for you as well. So explain to us kind of what's going on in some of these images.
All right, in the top left one, you see some cadets up on the yard arm grabbing onto the sail. So what they're doing right now is furling the sail. So after, when you see pictures of the sails rolled up all nicely on top of a yard arm when they're in port, that's a furled sail. So that's what these cadets are doing right here is bringing the sails from being set back onto the yard. In the top right, we have some cadets doing navigation on the chart table. So while we are navigating, we do have GPS and all the modern navigating techniques, but we simultaneously run old school, where we're shooting visual bearings and calculating set and drift and plotting it down to a paper chart. And
do you still teach celestial navigation?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We teach CellNav. You can find your way across the world with stars, so that's incredible. Do you try to do it while you're underway on those transatlantic voyages?
Yeah, absolutely. So this last summer, we had one of our best experiences. We sailed from the Azores to Bermuda, which was, I think, a little over 1,500 miles or so. We turned off the GPSs and we sailed by nothing but celestial, and we ended up about 30 miles off of where we thought we were. So I'd say over that transit, percentage-wise, I think that's pretty good.
That's a pretty good success. How about the folks at the helm there?
The folks at the helm, so our helm is open air. We don't have a hydraulic steering inside a pilot house. It's all done out in the elements. So if it's raining, snowing, super hot, or hailing even in the North Sea like we had this past year, our trainees and our crew are out there on the helm. And then in the bottom right picture, you see cadets hauling on lines. So Eagle is sailed, right? We set sails as much as possible, and while we have a mechanical advantage, none of it is done automatically. We haul on every line in order to set those sails and move the yards.
Excellent. What do you think some of the more total crew involved evolutions are that require the entire crews and maybe trainees to participate?
So sail stations is an all-hands evolution. I mean, when you look at the size of those sails and the yards, it takes all roughly 200 people on board to be able to to execute some of our more advanced sailing maneuvers, like we call it tacking or wearing the ship when we're trying to turn around through the wind or put our stern through the wind. That takes everyone, all hands on deck.
Excellent. Random question, maybe it'll come as a fun fact. What is Eagle made out of? Is it metal? Is it wood? There's wood parts, but is it primarily metal?
It is primarily metal, so we have a steel hull with steel decks, and on top of the steel decks, there is the wood is 3-inch teak planks, which it turns out it actually provides longitudinal strength to the ship, because there was a couple years back in the 80s where we sailed while we were replacing that teak, that we sailed without it, and we actually visibly saw a warping in the steel decks.
That's incredible. And the masts and the yard arms, same thing, steel. Excellent. Anchor evolutions also, I know cadets are using or are learning about anchoring evolutions, so there's lots of things that occur on Eagle, and there's a great expanse of lessons to be learned from the engine room all the way up on deck, so it's great stuff. You want to go into some of the notable transits for Eagle?
Yeah, so Alex asked me to try to pick out some of the fun transits from our history. 1946 was the first year that we sailed it, right? We picked it up from the Germans, restored the rigging, and since we did not have as much experience sailing a tall ship, we sailed with a half American, half German crew back from Bremerhaven, Germany to New York. And unfortunately, without the modern weather observations that we have today, they hit a hurricane in between Bermuda and New York. But obviously, they were successful.
And I heard that this past summer or the year prior, you actually revisited some of these spots as part of a bicentennial or year celebration.
Yes, so we go to different spots. I don't remember actually the last time we were in Bremerhaven.
Okay.
However, we did visit Kiel, Germany, this past year. Kiel was where Eagle was home ported when she was still Horst Vessel, a German ship.
Okay.
And it's the current home port of the German Gorchfock.
Oh, cool.
So we moored up there at the German Navy base, and we have really good relations with the Germans, and they love being on our ship, and we love sharing it with them.
Excellent.
1987 to 1988 was Eagle's longest voyage, where she sailed all the way down through the South Pacific and to Australia for Australia's bicentennial. There's a fun story behind how Eagle was selected for that, but I'll leave it to those of you who want to fact check on the internet, see if you can dig up the story about it. We immediately followed that one up with a trip to Leningrad in 1989. That's the only documented time that I've found that we visited Russia, or at the time, the Soviet Union. Working on trying to get Eagle to visit Africa. It turns out the last time we were in Africa was 1951. There were a couple trips where they visited Casablanca on their way back from a European cruise. And then the same summer that Alex and I were sailing by the Canary Islands, Eagle actually conducted a search and rescue case. I think it was the week after we left, actually, but there was a fishing boat that was taking on water, and Eagle was the nearest vessel nearby, heard them on VHF, sailed over and picked a few fishermen off the water and sailed and then returned them back to the Canary Islands.
There you go. Underway, making way, always doing the mission. Fantastic. Notable sea stories from the Eagle. I know that it's had some visitors of note to highlight here in this presentation.
Yeah, we so everywhere we go, we throw out, we basically open the door, roll out the carpet, invite everyone, the general public, through the VIPs of wherever we are to come on board. We've been fortunate enough to have 3 official presidential visits from Presidents Kennedy, Clinton, and Truman, and we have those photographs hanging up inside the ship. 3 honorable mention for presidential visits. We don't give them quite the full credit. Lyndon Johnson visited us at the same time as Kennedy, but obviously he was vice president, so he does not get the full presidential visit. Same with George Herbert Walker Bush, who visited us during the Reagan administration, and then Gerald Ford, who visited us after he was president. Every summer, we're averaging about 40,000 visitors across Eagle's decks. So like I said, everywhere we pull in, we ask the general public to come on board, take tours, walk around, talk to the crew. We sail over 12,000 nautical miles a year, and we boast that we have over 1,000 unique trainees every summer.
Excellent. And I know you mentioned the racks already on board, or those beds for trainees. And then our last little tidbit here about Alex Haley. That's just something I learned about as well.
So Alex Haley is one of our Coast Guard heroes. He was a 20-year Coast Guard veteran back, I think, in the 50s. But he wrote part of his famous book, Roots, while actually visiting and sailing on board Eagle. I just found his signature in the guest book, actually, from San Francisco, California in 1971. So
very cool. Very cool.
Confirmed the story.
Excellent. And Mr. Hool asks here, has Eagle ever visited any Arctic or Antarctic regions?
That's a great question. So our last visit above the Arctic Circle was in 2011, I believe, is when we visited Reykjavik, Iceland. And you'll see on our schedule coming up, it really hasn't gone public yet, hasn't gone live, but we're visiting Iceland again this year. So if there's time in the schedule, we may just poke our heads above.
And is that for swap cruises or for third class?
That'll be for the third class.
Excellent.
So for the sophomores, like I said, they stretch their legs. So they'll spend 3 weeks at sea in between New London, Connecticut and Reykjavik, Iceland, and then 3 weeks on the way back.
And if any cadets are watching this and you're now just learning about your summer schedule, congratulations. Have fun this summer. So we have another question here. What's the annual cost of operation approximately of Eagle?
That's a tough one. I would have to get back to you on that. Just the way the budget breaks down between what our actual ship expenditures are versus how much the Coast Guard spends in total to operate the asset. It's kind of a little bit of a complicated question. So if you want to hit me up on the side, I can answer that.
Sure, absolutely. All right. And speaking of that schedule, you want to go over some of your ports of call for this summer, what these different phases may mean for those cadets, and then those OCS cruises as well.
Sure. So we're embarking on our first trip of the year, our OCS cruise for the spring OCS class. We're headed down to Charleston. We leave on Sunday, and we just do a round trip down. We like to go south in the spring because it's a little bit warmer down there right now. And we'll follow up with our third class summer training starts in May. We'll be headed down to Puerto Rico, visit Savannah, Georgia on our way back, and then do a phase change in New London where we swap out one half of the class for the next half. Then there's that big Iceland trip with a stop in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Kind of cool that you're going as far south as Puerto Rico and then all the way up to Iceland.
Right?
That's a heck of a transit right there.
It's a lot of miles.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that Halifax stop at the end of July, we talk about the brand new trainees who are just reporting. That'll actually be, that's our first, we call them swap shorts, but the first time we bring those new freshmen on board. So their first experience in the Coast Guard will be busing up to Nova Scotia and then sailing the ship down to New York City. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty good.
Excellent. I got the privilege of serving and sailing on board Eagle for a little while, a couple summers back before coming off active duty. And I know when we were pulling into Eagle, we hosted the crew of the Hamilton.
Nice.
The cast and crew came on board. So outside of political figures, you also get to host some folks that may be in the spotlight in other ways. So yeah, having the cast of Hamilton was pretty cool coming on board. And I see swap short phase 2 goes from New York back to New London.
That's right. So we're trying to stay in New York City for Coast Guard Day, which is the 4th of August, the Coast Guard's birthday. And so we're going to do a quick stop in New London the next week, and then up to Boston, which ends our official summer training period. And then you'll see in the fall we're planning to head down to Norfolk for the fall OCS season. One thing I think I want to hit on, Alex, with the schedule here is for the partners, right? Each one of these domestic ports, we try to, while we're doing public tours, we try to open up for admissions type questions and people to come on board. Sometimes we set up a tent. Sometimes we have the formal admissions programs on board. But when we're sailing into these ports, we also invite partners through Alex's office to come on board the Eagle and sail into the port and one of the ride-along options. So keep your eye out for those opportunities. We broadcast them, advertise them, but we love to engage with the admissions partners everywhere we go. It's fun to see friendly faces.
No, that's a great point. So yeah, any volunteers that would like to sail on board Eagle, whether inbound or mainly inbound experiences,
yes, inbound
and inbound only, please let me know. I will send out additional notifications to come, and look forward to hearing those responses. Now, does your schedule stop with just this experience? What is Eagle and the crew doing outside of this training experience throughout the year?
Good question, Alex. Yeah, so our core 6 months in the summer is when we're training, and in the 6 months through the winter, we're doing maintenance and training the ship's crew itself. So we've been spending our winters in the Coast Guard Yard in Baltimore for the past 6 years, getting some significant dry dock and engine mechanical replacements done. And then we do our own training, like we talked about, finishing our Artista this week. So Eagle is still out and about and working all through the winter. But when we are in port, feel free to come on by. We give public tours every day.
Yeah, it's a busy crew, a busy ship. Very comparable to active duty ships out there doing other missions like law enforcement, search and rescue. So we got another question. Does the vessel ever sail into or around the Great Lakes?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to say we're too tall. I'm going to say that the bridges are too low for us to make it to the Great Lakes. There's currently no waterway that can support a vessel of our height to make it all the way. I think we get stopped somewhere after Quebec, or is it Montreal? One of the two. But coming through the north, we can't make it all the way.
But it's a different story for canals like the Suez and the Panama Canal.
Correct. Yeah, we can sail through the Panama Canal. We haven't sailed through the Suez Canal, but that would be pretty
be a first for everything. Yeah. So if Captain Turdo is watching this, Captain of Eagle, sir, maybe you can make it happen. All right. You wanted to...
From April 2019, Eagle sailing through the English Channel. We sailed to do a close-up shot of the White Cliffs of Dover, and I was saying that in the White Building, there's the British Coast Guard. And they were asking what we were doing, and we said we just want to get a close look of your beautiful landscape. So,
excellent. No, it's a great shot. I heard that the lighthouse wanted you to keep your distance, though.
They asked us to stay about a mile away from the cliff. So.
There you go. So with that, that brings us to the end of our presentation. We're right at the 3:30 mark, so we're about wrapping it up, and we'll take any last-minute questions here. And one of the questions here is, will the public be invited to tour the Eagle in Charleston next Friday on March 13th?
Yes, we'll be open for 2 hours after we arrive until 2 hours before our reception. So I believe the tour hours on Friday will be 1200 to 1600.
Okay.
And then on Saturday from 9 a.m. until 7 o'clock at night.
All right, thank you for that. I provided some information here on the screen for everyone's awareness. If you'd like to look at that spot video on Eagle, you can always go onto YouTube or Google and type Coast Guard Cutter Eagle to find information, videos, and experiences on board. One book that, there's a couple good books and videos on as well. One that's produced by the Coast Guard was called On the Wings of Eagle. There's a book called A Perfect Lady. That is one that we have as well. It's a visual history on the ship. And again, any opportunities that you'd like to have on board, please contact me. And I want to put in another plug. Go onto the Eagle Facebook page. Make sure you like them. Leave a comment. Thank them for what they do. They do a lot for training our future officers and leaders in the world's greatest Coast Guard. So we have another question here as well. Who would a parents association contact be if they wanted to greet Eagle when it comes into Savannah? So you have parents chasing Eagle around to see their cadets. What's the best way that they find out information on Eagle?
Oh, so the best way to get a hold of Eagle is to go to the Academy Eagle page, and that always has our most up-to-date schedule. Um, Usually, a head of a local parents association chapter will reach out to me directly and ask kind of more details about the event, and then we kind of funnel the logistics through a singular point. So I would say that if the parents want to get involved with Eagle, find a local chapter representative and have them reach out to the show.
Excellent.
We lost him.
Um,
No, we didn't. Oh,
we're
no,
still
we
there. And then if we have, so we got your parents' position question answered. And then contact information for Lieutenant Radin. So Dave here is actually getting out of the Coast Guard here pretty soon, correct? So congratulations on your next phase of your career in your life. We can work on getting folks information on the new contacts for the summer. If you want to email me directly, I will certainly put you in touch with the folks that you need to be working with for anything Parents Association related. So thank you for that. Any last minute questions before we hang up today's call? It was a great presentation. I thank again Lieutenant Radin for making the time to be on board with us today. We had a great participation rate from the folks that have registered. Good recording for today's presentation as well. I'll make sure to get that online and edited for everyone's consumption here soon. Taking any last minute questions? Looks like a lot of happy folks. And with that, we'll wish Dave, thank you very much. Fair winds following seas. And thank you all for attending today's presentation. So with that, we say go Eagle and forever go Bears.
Go Bears.